primarily for a shovel-ready project called Mara Rosa, which should be in production in the first half of 2024. We created a royalty on that, on all the exploration ground around that Mara Rosa project, which I'll talk, which is a significant part of our story. In terms of what we've been focused on since we went public, we've really been focused on trying to understand the geological baseline of our Lavras Sawh project. We currently have a gold resource of about 1 million ounces, 43-101 compliant, but we've been very optimistic that we can certainly grow from that resource base. And I think the drilling results that we've actually generated over the last 14 or 15 months is really pointing in that direction. In terms of our capital structure, we have a very tight capital structure. We have 41.1 million shares outstanding, about 3.7 million options. We had cash as of June 30th, about 2.1 million, and we have no warrants. We have a very strong shareholder base. We have insiders, board and management, about 24% of the company. Eric Sprott is one of our anchor investors at just under 17%, and we've got a mix of institutional and retail shareholders. And as I mentioned, we also have this 2% royalty on all the exploration ground around the Mara Rosa exploration project. Let's just get into the guts of what we have down at Lavras. The first thing I want to do is just orient people in terms of where we're located. We're located in southern Brazil, south of Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. The largest city is Porto Alegre. It's a port city in Rio Grande do Sul state. It's about 1.5 million people. We drive for about 4.5 hours to our Lavras Sawh project by tarmac road. This is an area of excellent infrastructure, power, roads, water, and so on, something that you really want to see when you're trying to build a mine. So we're really not in the, up in the jungles of northern Brazil. We're in the southern part of Brazil. And most of our team, I'm very proud to say, lives in and around the Lavras Sawh area and is from the area, and they're doing a fantastic job. Just wanted to give people a sense as to what we've been doing over the last little while. Basically, we have put together a very large contiguous land package consisting of about 29 mineral claims covering the favorable geology at Lavras. It's about 22,000 hectares of ground. Actually, the history of gold exploration and mining in the Lavras region actually goes back to the late 1700s when the Portuguese arrived, and they basically were mining sort of surface gold deposits that they found in the area. So we highlight about 23 known gold targets scattered throughout our property position, and have really been following up on those to just unravel the geology and understand what's going on our property. We currently have about 1 million ounces of 43-101 compliant resources in 2 of these 23 known gold showings, one at Butiá, which is by far our most advanced project, and then Cerrito, which is located on the northeast end of the property. Since we've gone public and started drilling off a number of these targets, we were happy to announce that we've actually made 6 new gold discoveries in the 14 or 15 months that we've been active. And so really, lots of singles and doubles, I would say, in terms of our exploration program. And then obviously with Fazenda de Posto, a nice long intercept and a new discovery hole there. So what are we dealing with? Basically, we're dealing with what we call an intrusive hosted alkaline gold copper system. And it's a very unique system in the sense that it's very rare to see something of this size and scale available to a little junior company like Lavras. But we spent a long time putting this whole property package together, and we're really just starting to understand the geology. And we're using sort of modern exploration techniques, if you like, to really understand the nature of the mineralization that we see. It could be a porphyry, alkaline porphyry type system. There's certainly one line of evidence that might be that, or it could be more of an IOCG system, which is kind of the area that I'm leaning towards. The key takeaway, however, is that these type of systems can be very, very big. And I have outlined here some of the large kind of world-class mines, if you like, that are related to either alkaline porphyry or IOCG. So for example, Porgera is 35 million ounces. That's Barrick Gold and Zijin Mining. Basically, the area where you find gold-bearing structures is in an area of about 3 to 4 kilometers. Olympic Dam, which is BHP Minerals, there's over 100 million ounces of gold there, even though it's primarily a copper and uranium mine in Australia. But where you find the mineralization is over an areal extent of 4 to 5 kilometers. And Cripple Creek, which is Newmont, has historically mined about 28.7 million ounces of gold. You find the gold-bearing structures over an area of 5 to 6 kilometers. What's very unique about our Lavras project on the right-hand side is that we find gold anomalism and copper anomalism in an area over 11 to 12 kilometers, and it's associated with what we call the Lavras Sawh intrusive complex. Here's a very quick geological map that shows that. Basically, this is a polyphase or multiple phase intrusive complex. It's the remnants, if you like, of the old magma chamber that would have produced the overlying volcanic rocks in green on the right-hand side here, and also the mineralization that we see scattered throughout this complex. And again, this is about 11 or 12 kilometers in diameter. And so it's a very, very large mineral system. And really what we've been trying to do over the last 14 months or so since going public is to just understand where those potential economic concentrations of gold and potentially copper are found. Again, you can see our claim block, 29 claim blocks, basically covers all of the favorable geology. And so very unique situation for a company of our size to control this type of district scale exploration potential. Just moving into specifically Fazenda de Posto and Butiá. I put this in here. It's a plan view just looking at the drilling that we've done on what we call our Butiá Gold Deposit. That's located along the southwest end of the intrusive complex. The resource there is about 500,000 ounces. It's basically a gold deposit sitting at surface. We've drilled this thing down to about 250 meters. It's still wide open. And the Fazenda de Posto drill hole, which is located on the west side, the northwest side of this fault. We think what's happening is Fazenda de Posto is actually an extension of Butiá, but it's a downdropped block of mineralization that's been preserved. And there was really no surface expression associated with this discovery, so we're calling it a blind discovery. And it's quite remarkable that the English and the Belgians mined in this area in the early 1900s, and we're literally a couple of hundred meters away from what we think is going to turn out to be a world-class discovery. This really just shows what Butiá is in terms of the 43101 compliant resource. It's about 500,000 ounces, about a gram or so gold sitting at surface. It's associated with these very altered rocks. We call them epicyanites. And we've plugged about 20,000 meters of drilling into this deposit with 78 holes. What's important to note is this is a number. It's a 500,000 ounce number, but it's by no means a fixed number. We think there's a tremendous amount of upside at Butiá, and in fact, we're drilling to expand this footprint, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Just getting back to Fazenda de Posto, though, what we did was we collared a hole across this northeast trending fault. And what's interesting, when you're in the field, you can actually see what we call recessive topography. And so it's not obvious that there was mineralization across this fault or this block of mineralization. But our thesis was that what was causing this recessive topography was that the rocks were probably altered. And because they were altered, you got a compression in the volume of these rocks. And therefore, there could be some sort of a blind discovery just sitting on the edge of Butiá. So we collared the hole and we drilled from in a north direction along a 20-degree azimuth. And we were very fortunate to drill through what we call granodiorite cover rock. And then we hit the zone of mineralization at about 117 meters. And we basically hit 340 meters of 1.09 grams per ton gold, and including some very high grade intervals, such as 160 meters of 1.8 grams, and another interval of 68 meters of 2.1, and another 27 meters of 2.1. So very significant discovery, sort of putting to rest the sort of low grade nature of some of the mineralization that we've been seeing at Butiá, and kind of confirming that, there is some very high grade mineralization associated with what we're starting to see. Just looking at a cross section, this is a west facing cross section of the drill hole. You can see that we drilled through this cover rock, which is what we call altered granodiorite. I think this rock is silicified, and you can see some remnant sort of quartz crystals in there. And we think the reason that you couldn't see a sort of a golden soil anomaly sitting on surface is because this is acting as some kind of a impermeable barrier. And so there's no surface expression of the gold above this rock. We drill down, and then we get into what we call epicyanite. This is the mineralized rock which is hosting the gold. Basically, it's a strongly alkaline altered granite. Basically, what's happened is any silica that would have, or quartz that would have originally been in this rock unit has gone into solution, we believe, and migrated somewhere else. And as the silica was being removed from this rock, it was basically depositing gold in the form of pyrite. And we can see these carbonate vesicles, we call them, which is probably like carbonate bubbles kind of precipitating out of these fluids and allowing the gold to precipitate. And then as we go through this long zone of mineralized rock, we hit what we call perthitic granite, which is shown here on the bottom picture, and that's basically the edge of the system as we know it so far. Just to give you a sense as to what some of the rocks look like in a bit more detail, this is what we call the cap rock. It's either silicified or albitized. You can see that it looks very massive, and but you can still see the remnants of the original granodiorite textures in there. This is something new and certainly something we hadn't realized before, and so it really opens up a lot of new targets for us in the sense that there's probably other buried deposits that we haven't recognized from our previous surface work. Again, this is just a little bit of a zoom in shot, if you like, of what this mineralized material looks like. You can see we have this kind of brick colored rock. The brick color is really in what we call these potassium feldspar minerals. It's really a consequence of barium and iron that's basically developing in these feldspar minerals to give it that sort of brick red color. We also have these little black blotches, if you like. That's actually iron-rich chlorite. And we notice the sulfide minerals, primarily pyrite and arsenian pyrite, which is hosting the gold. It's associated with the chlorite. We also find some higher grade intervals in the epicyanite. And in this particular instance, we've got 6.9 grams per ton gold. It's associated with this epicyanite, but then we're getting these later stage cross-cutting sulfide veinlets. These sulfide veinlets, again, are pyrite and arsenian pyrite, but we're also seeing a lot of galena. Where we see the base metals, particularly lead, we tend to get elevated gold grades, but it's very interesting to see, multiple phases of mineralization, which is what you want to see in these big systems. So we know we've got the original mineralization associated with the epicyanite, but we've also got another later pulse of these sulfide veinlets ripping through the rocks and certainly elevating the gold grades, at least in this case. And then this is just another example of some higher grade mineralization in the epicyanite. You can see a network of these millimeter scale sulfide veinlets through the rocks in the matrix to the feldspar minerals. And where we see a higher concentration of sulfides, we tend to see a higher grade, a tenor as well. So very, very interesting and sort of telling us a story here that we are starting to learn about. In terms of the exploration upside, I put this slide in here to kind of zoom out a little bit, just to note the scale on the right-hand side. I think that's like 400 meters or so. So we're looking at a surface expression of the Butiá deposit right here. We've got Fazenda de Posto just across a fault on the left or west-hand side. But we have this very large golden soil anomaly. It's in the range of 3.5 to 4 kilometers in a sort of a southeast direction, and also goes for at least 2 kilometers or more to the north. And I put this in here really to demonstrate that the system, that this gold mineralization that we're starting to see in this area is very large. It's not just a little isolated event. It's actually quite large. And what's really interesting about Fazenda de Posto is that I mentioned it was a sort of a blind discovery. So if we kind of zoom in on this area, basically here's Fazenda de Posto. But this whole area here is really this down drop block. And you can see there's some kind of a structure coming right across here in a northeast sort of direction. And so we believe that this whole area is wide open, and we need to drill it off to determine whether or not, or basically determine the size of this new discovery we have. What we're going to do is we have 2 drills on site right now. And basically we're testing, for this geometry of this Fazenda Deposto discovery. But we're also very optimistic that, this footprint that we see at Butiá is actually not the limits of the mineralization that we know about. We're actually testing for extensions to the Butiá system as well, because ultimately this whole system is going to be probably a critical mass to develop a gold mine. So just to sum it up a little bit, I think it's important that people just keep perspective. So obviously Fazenda Deposto and Butiá is developing into the center of gravity, if you like, of our project. However, we've had tremendous success in testing a lot of these other gold systems that have developed around this intrusive complex. And, this just really lists them. We've got some really interesting drilling going on at Matilji Extension with interesting results. We've announced some very interesting high-grade bonanza kind of grades coming out of Zeka Souza, which is only about 1.5 kilometers to the north of Fazenda Deposto and Butiá. We have some very interesting results coming out of Galvo, and we've reinterpreted some really interesting results coming out of Canalera as well. And so really what I wanted to emphasize with this chart is that this is not just an isolated small little deposit on our property. We actually have multiple targets, and it really just reflects the size of the mineral system that we're dealing with in the Lavras Sawh intrusive complex. So in the near term, our objective is to define the geometry and grade distribution of the Fazenda Deposto gold discovery. So we will be drilling that to really try and understand just what we have. The second thing we're going to do is to de-risk Fazenda and Butiá, so that we can start to work, at least in the medium term, towards some sort of a preliminary economic study. So those are the key objectives, but lots of work ahead of us, but certainly we're very excited by the direction that we're moving. So with that, I will just turn it over to Annemarie, and maybe if there's any questions, I can try and answer them to the extent that I can.
Thanks, Mike. We do have a couple questions, but I noticed that a few of our amazing exploration team from Brazil have joined the call. So I just wanted to say congratulations to them for this amazing discovery. I'm sure, Mike, you might want to add a comment or two as well, seeing as they're joined with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say that, this success is not about Lavras Gold per se. This success is really about the people of Brazil and our great team down in Lavras, and they've been working really hard. And just hats off to them for such an excellent job.
And with that, our first question is, someone asked to clarify, the gold is associated with pyrite, which has replaced the quartz in the granite. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, well, sort of. Basically, what's happening is you're getting a lot of these, we believe they're alkaline fluids that are coming in through the rocks. You're getting a kind of a metasomatic event. And the quartz that was in the original granite is going into solution, and it's being remobilized away from this area. So basically, what we're dealing with is a kind of an alkaline alteration. And you can see a lot of these we notice a lot of carbonate, actually. I call them carbonate vesicles, which is kind of a weird term for an intrusive rock. But anyway, they're basically carbonate bubbles that have been popping out of these fluids. And think of it like a bottle of ginger ale. As you shake that bottle of ginger ale, take that cap off, that carbonate releases in the form of bubbles. And when that happens, if there's, let's say, a pressure drop, you start to precipitate out the gold. And in this case, it's in the form of probably pyrite and Arsenian pyrite.
And then another question is, how does this mineralization tie in with the gold-bearing minerals in the Butiá deposit?
Mm-hmm.
And just a follow-up is do you think it'll be a potentially complex ore to process?
Yeah, those are all good questions. So I think the Butiá mineralization, or the styles of mineralization that we're seeing at Butiá, are very similar in many respects to what we're seeing at Fazenda Deposto. In fact, it's very possible that what's happened is we're looking at a down drop block of Butiá, or the original Butiá, if you like, on the west side, and it's just been down dropped. And so that we're actually looking at kind of a preserved Butiá in the west side, where we have Fazenda de Posto compared to what we have at Butiá now. Basically, at Butiá, we're seeing the epicyanite, we're seeing pyrite, we're seeing Arsenian pyrite with the gold. We're also seeing base metals. We're seeing, where we see elevated galena or lead, for example, where we see elevated zinc numbers, we tend to see higher grade gold as well. So I think they're connected. They're very similar. But we have a long way to go. Like I said, part of our effort here is to actually increase the footprint of Butiá, because we think Butiá is a lot bigger than just what's presented in a 43-101 compliant gold resource. But in terms of metallurgy, we have done metallurgy at Butiá, and we were getting something like 90% recoveries. It's sort of a gravity circuit with a combination of either flotation or CIL on the back end. So we're optimistic that, yeah, we'll be able to recover the gold. We have to obviously do that work, but if the style of mineralization that we're seeing at Butiá is similar to Fazenda de Posto, then we think we'll be okay.
Another question is, based on the geologic signature at Fazenda de Posto for the blind discovery, are there specific areas on the property that now look prospective that didn't necessarily look like that was prospective before?
Well, I mean, prior to this sort of blind discovery, we were really focusing on surface work to guide our exploration efforts. So specifically gold and soil anomalies, and that's certainly a great tool to use, and also some pathfinders as well associated with the soil anomalies. But what's interesting is that if you look regionally in the Lavras Sawh area, these northeast trending structures are very, very important, because we believe, or at least I believe, they're crustal scale structures. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is these are deep structures that go down 7, 8, 9, 10 kilometers into the upper mantle of the earth. And a lot of gold systems, for whatever reason, seem to be related to upper mantle material. So one thing that we do see in our exploration effort is we see a lot of Lamprophire dikes. These Lamprophires occupy these structures, and so and Lamprophire material comes from the upper mantle. And so we're quite convinced that we have deep tapping structures, and certainly these northeast trending structures are very important. But now that we have a sense that there's these downdrop blocks, if you like, which may have cover rock, which means that we're not seeing the surface expression of the gold, it opens up a lot of possibilities. So I think it's a combination of us following along these structural interpretations, looking at the rocks, looking for these cover rocks, and seeing if we can drill and poke below these cover rocks to see if there might be another hidden gold deposit. So there's no reason to believe that there's not more of these, but this is really just the first one that we found.
Is there any indications that the overburden becomes less thick elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we have to determine that. I mean, for example, Butiá is sitting right at surface, so we could argue that we're looking at a kind of an erosional plane, if you like. So it could have been there was something on top of Butiá originally, and over time it's been eroded. So now we're seeing the surface expression of it. But if you're specifically talking about Fazenda de Posto, we don't really know at this stage. What we're going to do, though, is do a number of vertical holes to try and understand exactly what the geometry of that cover rock looks like in this area specifically.
And you're going to love this question, because it's an opportunity to nerd out about IOCG, or porphyry style. The question is understanding that the Cripple Creek analogy, but thinking that the IOCG might be a stretch. So just hoping for some elaboration on why you're going with that type of different type.
Yeah, the main reason for it, there's a lot of reasons for it actually, but I mean, look, it could be alkaline porphyry, could be IOCG. For the geologists that are on the call, Dick Silito actually visited this project in the mid-1990s, and the geologists would understand that Dick is quite a well-known porphyry expert. And when he visited this project, in his report, he basically said he didn't think this was a porphyry system. And the reason for that was that we see a lot of carbonate in the system, and the mineralization, not just here at Fazenda de Posto and Butiá, but in other areas, seems to be associated with structures. And so structural control is a very important aspect of what's going on here. When we look at the mineral chemistry, I've had a lot of petrographic work done. We're noticing a lot of iron in the system. We're seeing it in the silicates. So we have like iron-rich chlorite. We have a phengite mica, which is an iron-rich sericite mineral. We're seeing some hematite, which is an iron oxide mineral. We're seeing a lot of the gold associated with iron sulfides, particularly pyrite. So there's a lot of iron in the system for sure. What else can I tell you? I mean, yeah, so oxides, silicates, and sulfides, we're seeing a lot of iron. I've looked at, we're actually in the trace element geochemistry, we're seeing some rare earth elements popping out in anomalous values. So rare earths typically tend to be more associated with the IOCG type of systems. And so that's another line of evidence. But, you know, look, I'm keeping an open mind. I have my own bias, but I'm not an academic. I'd be really a half-assed academic at best. But so we're going to keep this very empirical in terms of how we approach our exploration strategy. But we'll leave the conclusions as to the origin of this very interesting deposit to the academic community.
Just a quick question. Can you convert the total size of the land package from hectares to kilometers squared? Do you have that in your brain, Mike?
Oh, can I do that in my brain? What do you multiply by 100 or something like that? I can't do that off the top of my head. Sorry, guys, but we can get back to
Do you
that.
have that in your head? No, we've been in hectares, but I will make sure to share that with everyone when I send around the presentation. We had a great question about the 2% NSR. Is it still on schedule for next year? And I believe that's regarding the Hochschild, the NSR on the Mara Rosa exploration.
Yeah, so yeah, just on that, we also have a royalty that we created when Amarillo Gold was bought by Hochschilds, and we spun out into Lavras Gold. We created a 2% royalty, just to be clear, on all the exploration ground around what's called the Posse Pit. The Posse Pit is about 1 million ounces. It's going to be in production again, probably in May or June of 2024, according to Hochschilds. We do not have a royalty on that. We have Franco-Nevada has a 1% royalty. I believe Royal Gold has a 2% royalty on the production coming out of that pit. What we did was we created a royalty on all of the exploration ground outside of that pit area. It's about 65,000 hectares of ground. And we made a discovery about 3 kilometers to the north called Pistino, which we believe will become a cash flowing royalty in due course. But when that actually happens is a little bit up in the air. Hochschilds did indicate to me that they've infilled this Pistino discovery and that they would probably incorporate that into their resource disclosures at year end. So I'm optimistic that what that means is Pistino will actually become a source of production in the future. And in this sense, it would certainly be something that would be valuation accretive to Lavras Gold.
So thanks, Mike, on that one. And just to follow up, we've got Hemdat, as usual, coming through with the save is 220 kilometers squared. Thanks, Hemdat. In the chat for everyone. And another question is, how far does our current cash position carry you?
So we had 2.1 million at the end of June, Canadian. Our burn rate in the last couple of months has been something like 350,000 a month or so. So I'll let people do the math from there.
Great. So we're coming to the end of the questions now. I just want to give it, does anyone have any last questions they want to pop in the chat? If you're shy, please do not hesitate to reach out to investor@lavrasgold.com. We are happy to set up a meeting and or call you back and answer any questions that you may have. The only reason I'm not giving you my personal email is it's just really long because my name is crazy. But seeing as I don't think we're getting any more questions coming in, yes, there will be a recording of this whole presentation and I will make sure that you have the slides. So Mike, why don't you wrap it up and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for taking the time to listen to our story, and we have lots of work ahead of us, and certainly we're going to work hard to get out some good results as best we can and in a very timely manner. And rest assured that we're working on behalf of all stakeholders. And thank you very much for your support.
And with that, I'm closing out the webinar. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.